I think that let's go there because I love what you said there. And, one thing that you say is burning your goals. So, and yet that has to do with the performance. And it's so tied into the messages in Pound the Stone. But when you say burn your goals, what do you mean by that process? Because I've also taken that and implemented it into this podcast.
Yeah. So it's funny because Burn Your Goals is the first book that I wrote. And oftentimes I get people that think that, he doesn't really mean that you should burn your goals. I'm like, yeah, no, I actually do. Well, no, you should still set goals though, right? And I'm like, no, I don't think that you should set goals. I think that we should live a mission-driven life. I think that goals actually let people off the hook. I think they allow them to shirk responsibility, because when you set these goals, these arbitrary based outcome goals, they're always dependent on factors that are outside of your control. And so let's take, Mother Teresa's mission was to serve the needs of the sick and the dying. No one can ever stop you from serving the needs of the sick and the dying. You can always do that. In prison, you can still serve the needs of the sick and the dying. Like, there's going to be options to live out that mission. Nobody can stop you from that. But a lot of times, somebody that has maybe that type of mission or passion in their heart, somebody's going to come along and say, oh, well, your goal needs to be for you to become a doctor. Well, guess what? There's a lot of things along the way where you may not have enough money. You may not be quote unquote qualified. You may not pass certain tests. You may have people tell you that you're disqualified. You may have all these different things that can happen that keep you from doing what you say that you want to do, which is just serve the needs of the sick and the dying. And so why would we, focus on something that's outside of our control instead of just focusing on something that's 100% controllable? And so, we talk about, let's focus, instead of goals, let's focus on commitments and controllables. So what can I do inside of my 86,400 seconds every single day to close the gap between where I'm at and where I want to be? What do I need to sacrifice inside of my 24 hours a day to close the gap between where I'm at and where I want to be? Who I am, who I want to become. And then, so that's commitments and controllables. Did I do it or did I not? 100% controllable.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you're the only person. Did you do what you committed to doing? Yes or no? I don't care about your excuses. I don't care what came up. Did you do what you committed to doing? Did you sacrifice what you committed to sacrificing? That's a hard conversation to have. We love blame. We love to blame the government.
It is
we
addicting.
love to blame. The most addicting. We love to blame the government. We love to blame our friends, our parents, our significant others, the boogeyman down the street. We love to blame China. We love to blame everyone. And we hate to actually look in the mirror and take responsibility for what we have control over. And the truth is, the scary thing is we have control over very little. It's very, very small what we actually have control over. So we say focus on commitments and controllables. And then the other thing is true mental toughness. And so one of the issues with performance, in my opinion, is that so often people will sacrifice what truly matters. And what I mean by truly matters is what will matter on your deathbed. We'll sacrifice what truly matters in the process of, in the search of the illusion of winning. That like, they think like, oh, well, maybe I can, if I win, then it's all worth it. Well, all of the, yeah, I was a jerk to this person. I treated these people so poorly. I was but I got to my goal. Well, then what happens when you don't get there? But even what happens when you do get there? And then you become that type of person that it's like, okay, so on your deathbed, that trophy is really going to matter. That little bit extra money is really going to matter on your deathbed. Francis Chan said, our greatest fear in life should not be of failure. Our greatest fear should be of succeeding at things in life that don't really matter. And so the way we define true mental toughness is having a great attitude, giving your very, very best, treating people really, really well, having unconditional gratitude regardless of your circumstances. And the thing is that if you focus on true mental toughness, the only thing you can do is win. Because if you lose, it becomes a greater opportunity to develop more true mental toughness. The tougher your circumstances, the greater the opportunity to develop true mental toughness. Also, John Wooden said that he's never found somebody that can describe for him something that you can do better than your best. So we've already said, give your very, very best. Also, while adding these other characteristics in that are really important, because everyone wants people on their team, whatever that is,
yes.
Sports and life and business, who embody the characteristics of true mental toughness. So focus on true mental toughness, focus on your mission and your controllables, and then let the results take care of themselves. The results are going to be pretty close to what they should be. That's it. John Wooden never talked about winning. Won more than anybody else. Never talked about winning to his team. He said that if we control the process, if we focus on the things that are inside of our control, the results will be pretty close to what they should be. And that's it. Sometimes there's going to be people that are better than us. Sometimes there's going to be businesses that are better than us. Sometimes there's going to be podcast hosts that are better than us. There's so many things. There's going to be other people that write better. There's going to be other people that speak better. There's going to be other people that are a better fit for somebody that you love and are in love with. Like there are certain things that are outside of our control. And why should we make ourselves miserable in the process of trying to control all this stuff that's outside of our control?
There's a lot to digest there. I love that. So, true mental toughness, it's learning, right? I mean, just take everything that's happening and learning. And if you learn from losing, you're not losing. Right. You're gaining something. And the fact that you said that about John Wooden, and the more that I learn about John Wooden, the more he's in the upper echelon of leaders, right? The fact that he never talked about winning is something that you could talk to people and they wouldn't believe you because of how successful he was.
Yeah.
And we make things more complicated than they need to be, right? That's kind of like our human.
Without a doubt.
That's something that we do as humans, is we make things way more complicated than they need to be. So just simplifying everything. And one thing that you say in Pound the Stone that I love, and I have taken it and I've implemented it in my life, as a father, as everything is easy things to do mean they're also easy not to do. And, focusing on those easy things that you can control and doing them, like you said, the best that you can, it really turns what you're doing, just simple tasks, and is no, I could put a little bit more effort in here. My mind is running a little bit. And that's something that I struggle with because, I have pretty severe ADHD that I manifested itself when my second child was born. And I'd always had it, but I mean, the stress that I had at that time really took it to another level. So I went in and I got help, and I got a new medication that I've never concentrated like this in my life. I didn't even know it was possible.
Yeah.
I can edit a video, and it takes me a long time because I'm still new and learning, and that's okay. And I can also go and clean the house in the same day. I thought that it was one or the other, honestly. But it's just knowing that I could be better. So what can I control that is easy, that I could be well, I'm not going to do that today. But why am I not going to do it today? Why wasn't I making the phone call for that psychiatry appointment? Why wasn't I, reading books to my kids? Why wasn't I sitting on the floor and playing with them? Why wasn't I cooking dinner every night? These are very easy things that honestly have brought more joy and betterment to my life than, when I was doing a job that, sure, I loved the job, but what was it bringing me mentally? It was bringing me a lot of burnout. It was bringing me a lot of a lot of stress. So, I was a lineman for a utility company. So I worked on high voltage power lines, and you're on call 24/7. And my ego got to the point, it was just 2 of us in a district that's supposed to have 5. So we had a lot of calls coming in, and we took a lot of pride in that we weren't going to ask for help. We didn't want help. And so I ended up burning myself out taking calls. I think for the year and a half that I was there, I think that I only had 2 weekends that I didn't take a call. And that was because I was out of town. Like, that's just, and I didn't know it. I was burned out for almost 2 years after I put myself through that. And then just going through some, other things. Why did I do that? The money was great. And goals. I thought I'd get this career. I thought I'd get my journeyman card. I can live life. Everything was going to take care of itself at that point. I'll be able to take care of my family and have extra. But I was unfulfilled and didn't know it. And so I'd go home. I'd go on autopilot mode. That's how I was living. And so a lot of times we can feel that a positive change is needed, right? Like, we feel it in our heart. We feel it right here. And for me, it got up to the point where it was like almost like a lump in my throat that something wasn't right with myself. And it wasn't right with my situation. And I didn't know what it was. And, so my family and I made a change and we moved across the country. And that, for my mental health, has been just, it's been incredible. I did not know that. I knew deep down, but I wasn't being honest with myself looking in the mirror. Like you said, we know when a change is needed. We just don't want to be honest.
Yeah.
So it's doing those easy things and knowing that they're also not easy to do and doing them your best. It increases the value that you see in your life so much more than you can imagine when you do it regularly.
Yeah. The other line I think that's in Pound the Stone is that oftentimes we get caught up seeking the remarkable instead of doing the unremarkable with remarkable consistency. Yes. And most of the time, if you look at people that you admire in whatever area it is, it's kind of what you were talking about, that it's not anything, crazy that they're doing. It's just that they do the simple things with remarkable consistency every single time, and doing that the unremarkable really, really well, really, really consistently. And when you do that, it's amazing then what happens. I like to say, dream big, execute small, and be faithful with small, think small. It's very easy to dream really big, but then do nothing about that, or try and do. Like, one thing I think is interesting, and I've seen this happen with a lot of my friends, is that they dream big, but then what they do is they come up with these elaborate schemes, let's call them, and it can be a scheme, it can be a dream, whatever it is. But in doing so, that again lets them off the hook, because they could just do the simple thing every single day, the small thing over and over and over and over again. No, let's do this super huge thing. It's most likely going to fail. But then we can be like, well, but I tried.
Yeah, I gave it the old college try.
Yeah, like kinda. Like, why didn't you just post on social media every single day? Well, I forget. I forget to do that. But it's 100% controllable and it's really easy. Yeah, but I've come up with this elaborate thing over here that I can do. Yeah, and maybe that thing will work. But why don't you just do the unremarkable thing with remarkable consistency? Like, why don't you just do the simple thing, the easy thing, over and over and over and over and over again? You ever listen to an MBA coach in the huddles?
Yeah, I have actually. it's like on the broadcast and stuff.
Yeah, like they don't say stuff that's crazy.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, we gotta hustle. We gotta get back on defense. I need you to box out. Like it's stuff that you learned when you were 7 years old.
Set your feet, right? Like, I mean, it's stuff like that.
And you're sitting there and you're like, I can teach that. Like, you guys get paid millions of dollars to coach, and this is what you're But guess what? Like, I was on staff with UCLA women's basketball for 7 years as the director of mental training. So I've been very exposed to John Wooden. And so it was always funny because sometimes I have this bad habit, I would call it, of I don't like repeating myself. Like if I'm in a speaking engagement or something like this, I'll say a quote one time and think that, well, I don't want to repeat myself because I've already said that. But man, you go and you watch almost any high level practice and the coach is going to say the same thing 50 or 100 times over and over and over and over again. And it's usually really basic stuff, but it's that mastery of those basics that then all of a sudden the cool stuff can happen down the road. You can shift out of that down the road, but you have to master those fundamentals. You have to master the basics. My dad didn't know anything about sports. He never played sports. He grew up in a trailer park, had to duct tape his trailer together, really tough childhood. My brother and I were both freak athletes. And so, but what my dad would tell us is do the basics. Do the basics. This is what he would tell us. And it was funny, of somebody that knew nothing about sports, but yet, like, if you look at a basketball game, what wins basketball games, what wins close games? Free throws and layups.
Yep.
Free throws and layups. Virtually every single close game that you will see in the NCAA tournament will be decided based upon free throws and layups. The most basic thing in basketball.
And that's something, so to take it to the NFL, and I'm a big Packers fan. So like, I grew up in Wisconsin. So it's a religion there. So if people ask me about Packers
My
fans,
business partner is from Appleton. So
okay.
Season
so
tickets,
yeah, I grew up in Kewanee, which is just east of there, like Green Bay area. So like, it's funny you say that. It's people ask me if I'm a Packers fan. I say, yeah, I'm religious. And they kind of look at me and I'm like, no, you don't understand unless you're there. But their defense, when they have championship level defense, it's because people are staying home. So like playing championship level defense, which you see the Wisconsin Badgers do, people on the backside stay home, and when they pursue, they don't give up the gaps, right? When they're playing poor defense, it's because their defensive ends are crashing down to get that quarterback, and it allows that edge to be had. And then it's like, well, what's going on? But like, that's the little things that we're talking about. Yeah. And that's something that, you know, somebody who played at a very low level can see on TV because we've been exposed to it. But it's those little things, right? And I mean, I was in, obviously, you know, line work, it's dangerous.
Yeah.
And that's something that we also have to remember, is doing those little things. Like something as simple as putting cones out. So if we go up and we're working on energized conductors, we have a different set of cones that go out there green, so that people know, wait, there's green cones out. So we have orange for traffic control, and then we have green ones. So they're like, why? That's weird. Why is there green? And that's so that everybody knows that truck could be energized if something goes wrong, so don't go near it. Huh. If we don't put those cones out, which is a simple thing, and we do forget, don't get me wrong. Yeah. Somebody, it's life or death. Just something as simple as that, because it is very easy to forget that could happen. And things happen behind you, and you plan for the worst and hope for the best. And that's part of doing those little things, is so you can, and here's another quote that I love, especially being a lineman, sleep through the storms. Yeah. Because, I mean, when the storms came, I would hear stories from old linemen, like they would wake up and they'd be awake waiting for that phone to ring. They know that phone is going to ring. But honestly, from the time that I started till I left, I slept like a baby. And the reason is I am not going to stop that phone from ringing. Whether I'm up or I'm sleeping, that phone's going to ring. That phone's going to ring.
Yeah. It reminds me of, there was this experiment that was done by these 9 Michigan hospitals back in 2004, where, in 2000s, we were at the height of innovation and so many technological advancements in science and technology. And these hospitals, they experimented with this new system, and it ended up saving, I think it was 1,500 lives. It reduced infection rates by 66%. And it saved about $15 million in less than a year. And what it was just a simple checklist of things that you had to do every single time before entering the operating room. And the number one thing of the 5 simple things was wash your hands. And, it was I think it was like 1876 that we figured out that washing of hands helped eliminate the spread of germs. And yet in 2004, we had this type of impact from doing something so simple. Because again, just because it's easy to do, that means it's easy not to do. And just because we know to do it doesn't mean that we do it. And just because we know to do it doesn't mean that we do it every single time. And so much of chop wood, carry water, pound the stone is what are those simple little things, and how do you create a system where you do those things every single time? Because that's where that power is. That once again, we're often caught up in seeking the remarkable, but it's just doing the remarkable with the unremarkable with remarkable consistency. And it is the same thing that like we oftentimes we think that one thing is going to change everything. Well, if I could just get this, this person on my podcast, if I could just get this job, if I could just get this opportunity, if I could just get the money for my foundation or for my startup, if I could just get a starting spot on a team, if I could just get a scholarship. One of my most interesting things to me, I've gotten to work with virtually every major institution, and especially their different sports teams at them. And I always found it so fascinating. You'd get to some place, I'll just use Duke because I played there and I've worked with them. And you get to Duke, and I remember being there with one of the sports programs and saying, I can see that you all are miserable. Wasn't there a time in your life whenever you were 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 years old that you thought, if I could just get to a place like Duke, everything will be like, I could not have a bad day. If I got a scholarship to play at a school like Duke, I could not have a bad day. If I just get to the NBA, if I just get to the NFL, if I could just become the CEO, if I could just become the head coach, then I would bullshit, complete fucking bullshit. But that's the game that we play, is that, if I could just get there, then everything, if that one thing would happen. But the truth is that one thing isn't really going to change much at all. And oftentimes what it can do is what I realized when Chop Wood went viral, and all of a sudden I realized at 32 that I never had to work another day in my life. Now all of a sudden I realized I'm really good at climbing mountains. I'm really good when I just have to put my head down and work and go and go and go, that there's very few people that can stay with me, that I can focus, I can grind harder, I can do things that don't make sense to people. When I just had to stop, I didn't have to do anything. When I stepped off the merry-go-round, I was like, oh shit. I've been able to bury a lot of stuff through grinding. I've been able to not deal with a lot of the real stuff going on internally because I've just kept my head down. I've just kept climbing. I've just kept doing things that everybody else did. People look around and they're like, oh my God, it's so incredible. You've been able to, do. But then when you stop and you get still, and that stuff starts coming up, it's like, oh, yeah, now all of a sudden my suicidal ideation is worse than it's ever been. My manic depression is worse than it's ever been. And I have all the trappings that most people would say make a ridiculously successful life. Just, it's weird.
It doesn't fill that hole that we have that we're trying to fill. And you know, what you're talking about here is sobriety. I mean, that's what we do when we get sober. We have been keeping our heads down, right? And we're putting it into something. And a lot of times we take it, we put it into something else. So like I took mine and I put my head down and I put it into my career. I got sober right before I came a lineman. Put it into that. And then all of a sudden I don't have to study so much anymore. I'm through my apprenticeship. I'm working on my own. I'm good at my job. I'm doing everything I'm supposed to be doing. But like, you have time to think at work now. You're not just reacting. You're not just doing this stuff. And then it's like, wait, is this it? Is this what I'm going to be doing for the next 40 years? Like, we get raised, and I want to go into this, and then Jennifer has a question for you, but I think this is a really good segue. We're raised in a culture that shames or guilts emotions. And we don't honestly learn why we feel an emotion, what's there, even like going through grief like you did at 9 years old. Like, we make people uncomfortable when we're dealing with our emotions, and they in turn are like, stop it. No, you can't do that, because that's just not what adults do. Like, you need to grow up. And so I've talked about this too before, like it's toxic masculinity, but it wasn't just done to men. Like, yes, women were allowed to feel, but they weren't allowed to feel to the full extent. They were only allowed to feel to a certain point. So like culture, and especially people our age, like we were raised to bury a lot. And we watched that toxic work ethic of our parents and then put everything into working hard and getting everything for us that they didn't have, or, you know, and that was going to be great. It reminds me of that Bruce Lee quote: don't give your children everything that you never had. Teach them everything that you wish you knew.